All right, let me freeze Sopranos here. Yes, I'm rewatching Sopranos. I'm on the last season. Um, I kind of, I remember when I watched it originally with the last season, I kind of speedballed through it. So pretty sure there's a lot of stuff about that I don't remember. Then the other seasons, I watched most of them on HBO, but I caught some of it later on A&E. I was like A&E, but hey, whatever. um, Let me adjust the lights. This is gonna be a fun, lighthearted conversation. Probably gonna go into some diversions, which is all fine. Um, I'm gonna set my goal here and adjust chat filter so I can get all the riffraff comments. Give goal. Hmm, set that for an hour. Offer martial arts techniques. Bam. There we go. Make sure this live is public. So every once in a while I make the mistake and it's not public. And then I wonder why no one's here. That and then I didn't preset it a day in advance, which would also help, of course. Sorry, it's late. I'm tired. Guys, by time is 8. 8 is like 8 o'clock is like 11 p.m. for me. Um, okay, so yeah, it's live. I mean, it's I know it's live. I mean, it is publicly visible. Okay, so yeah, cool. That means people will be coming in. I'm gonna hydrate first. But what's up to everyone? Oops, in the live stream. Um, Topic's pretty lighthearted, so this might go many a way. But the topic is being smart is cool. So that is the topic. Julian says, "How are you?" I'm doing well. Tired, but other than that, I'm doing well. um, Trying to think of stuff I need to do before I go to bed. Besides doing this live stream, guess I want to do a little bit of calisthenics. Still need to put some stuff in the dryer. Need to hit up Mrs. Contrarian. I don't have a favorite color. What is plan? Saving this movie for later for me and Mrs. Contrarian. Yep. Okay. Oh, we got 2 gifts already. Thank you to Joshua dash W2Y6D. And who else sent the other one? Oh, did he send both? But yeah. So the topic is being smart is cool. Uh, that is something that was not very well received being a kid growing up in a predominantly black school. I mean, American schools generally abhor intelligence and a love of academics, especially if you came up between the 70s, 80s, and 90s, being meaning you were like Gen X or millennial. Um, People abhorred uh, anyone who showed academic aptitude of any sort, and I, I I'm sure it started before the 70s, um, late 60s. I'm going back to the late 60s and 70s though, and not farther than that because one, I don't have experience with baby boomer and silent generation and greatest generation in school, how it was received by them. That's number one. Two is that even if they shared similar anti intellectual attitudes, the fact of the matter is they still received better education than Gen X and millennials and now Gen Z. So even if they didn't appreciate it, they still had access to a wider resource of academic uh, academic interests. Like they, you know, in public school now you would probably only find these things in a private school, but even in public school at those times, look, you would learn how to swim, you would learn how to drive, um, you were basically taught how to be a citizen coming out of high school because most people didn't go on to college back then. Not because they couldn't, but because most people are expected to work as soon as possible, which is why a lot of guys didn't even finish high school because they went right on into the working world by the time they were like what 16, maybe. Some of them had already knocked up their high school sweetheart. So yeah. Um, Let me put on my glasses. I know this is already a stupid comment, but I'm gonna read it anyway. But I can't understand the username, so I have to put on my glasses. So Colo Colodus Santhi 87 says why you look like you work at an insurance office. Why is it that you can't make a grammatical question? And since when do people in insurance offices wear you know exercise shirts? You know, if so, I mean, I don't know what sort of insurance office you're going to where they look like they are doing no gi BJJ, but I guess. B Dog says, "How we doing today?" I'm all right. I'm just tired. I get up, 4:20 a.m. to do my workouts and stuff. So usually tired around 8. So that's why I haven't been doing my live streams as late anymore. Some people know that I've used to do live streams as late as midnight. I cut that stuff out. Do you know Stray Kids? I don't, never heard of them. Emery Fitzgerald. Um, So, like I said, being smart is cool, yo. Overseas, it's not. This is not even like only here we gotta have a discussion like this. Overseas, like this is like well known. Like you know, amongst I don't want to just pick on black people, but I am for the most part. That they think being smart is being white, even though a lot of white people don't think being smart is cool. But if you show in any sort of academic aptitude in the black community, you know, you're a square, you're a lame, you're acting white, um, you must be ugly, you must be gay, all these things. There's a large anti-intellectual streak within the black community, which is one of the reasons why the black community is always behind other minority groups in America. One of the reasons, not the only, but is one of the reasons. Um, I've picked out several other ones in many other live streams, such as uh, valuing degenerate behavior, having a lower average IQ than other groups, and other sort of things. um, the having a matrilineal society and all sorts of stuff. So, in any case, it, being smart is not cool here, which is different from some of our brothers over in Africa. You know, my friend was telling me he's you know Nigerian or half Nigerian, whatever, and he told me family over there talk about going to school, and over there the the, the smart guys are the popular ones because the girls over there are smart enough to know that the guys who do well in school are the ones who are going to end up having a career, which means having money so they can provide for said women. So women here incentivize guys to be stupid because they like the bad boy. They like the guys who are acting retarded in school. The guy who's like participating in class and all that sort of stuff. He's seen as lame unless he's really attractive to a chick. Then you can get away like if you are very attractive, you can kind of get away with being uh, um, outwardly smart because a lot of us, often had to hide the fact that we were smart. And it was like I didn't realize, so many of my friends, were smart until we had until they uh, report cards came out, and at least at one of my high schools, because I went to three different high schools, but at least at one of my high schools, like all the kids who were on honor roll were separated from the ones who didn't. Um, when on that day once grades came out, and I realized then I was like, oh, so a lot of these guys are actually doing well in school. They just don't talk about it. Especially the ones who were in sports. A lot of them were actually doing well, which was a surprise. And again, I'm from Baltimore, but I was in the Baltimore County, not Baltimore City. Baltimore City was quite different. Most of those kids were dumb. And even the ones who weren't dumb weren't rewarded for being smart. So again, they had to act like clowns to fit in. It's kind of sad. This is I've definitely seen this in the Latino community because when I moved to the DC suburbs, I saw that the Spanish kids a lot of them were worse off than the black kids. Like they did not give a shit about school whatsoever. Like almost maybe the girls did. Some of the girls did, but the guys they did not give a shit uh about school at all. And anyone who did was kind of ostracized. They they were seen as it was for them. It was seen as almost like effeminate or anti anti Latino to be invested in academics. They just assumed they just accepted a life of being a blue collar type person. On top of that, like they often would just have children very young and out of wedlock, and but usually they stayed with those girls and ended up marrying them. So that's good, but having kids at such a young age, it was just a bad idea. And I realized it wasn't even a stereotype; like it was like cultural expectation at that point because some of the ones who befriended me, like I see them later, like I knew them in high school, and I meet them like 4 years later, and they're like, "Yo, what's up? What?" It's like, "You got any kids yet?" I'm like, "No." It's like, "Dude, you gotta work on that. You getting old." Old? I'm 21. The fuck? How? I'm 21. You talking about I'm getting old? Like, I'm not getting old at 21. Like, why would I? I'm already supposed to have kids? Like, that's crazy. Because it was like a dude and his girlfriend. I remember from my geometry class. Um, and they were in the 10th grade at the time, so they were younger than me. Um, and like I said, it was 4 years later, so I'm assuming, you know, sophomore for them. I mean, I was 15 in the 10th grade, but I'm guessing they were like about 16. So yeah, so they were about 20. They already had a kid or kids, and they were like, yeah. She was agreeing with him, like she was. She was just like shaking her head. Yeah, I mean, she was like nodding her head. Yeah, and he was like, dude, what's up? You already like get 21, about to be 22. He is like, I might have been 22. It don't matter. Even though I was 21 or 22, to say that I'm getting old and I need kids is just crazy work. At 21, 22, really? Come on, man. So yeah, so the Latino kids were often worse than the black kids when it came to like um thinking being smart is like not a good thing. I'm like, I'm invested in finishing college. I was not thinking about I was nowhere near thinking about kids no more than I was thinking about marriage or owning a home. Like, no. Like, yeah, if this was like, sure, 50 years ago, yeah, at 21, I probably would already have a kid and probably be paying a mortgage on the house. But this ain't the fucking 50s. So it was just crazy. But in any case, like I said, being smart is cool. And like I said, you'd be surprised that, some of your favorite celebrities and athletes are quite educated. And I know some people are gonna say, yes, being smart and educated aren't the same. Yeah, I get that. However, education can serve as a proxy can serve as a proxy for one's pretty much level of intelligence because there is a strong positive correlation between your level of education and your IQ. So if you're a college graduate, um, the average college graduate has an IQ of about, I'm gonna say 112 because it's gone down in the last few years. It used when I was coming out of school, the average was like about, well, when yeah, by the time I was in college, the average IQ of a college student was 115, with a college average IQ of a college graduate being 120, and the average IQ of a grad student being 130. So those degrees did serve as a proxy for one's level of intelligence, even though it's so it's popular in uh, in common parlance to say that uh, education doesn't equal intelligence or whatever. And yeah, that's true to a point, but it is a good proxy. It's it gives you a crude consumer index of a person's level of intelligence. Um, but anywho, like I said, it is the reason why I say being smart is cool is because being smart gives you more options. It gives you more options in life. It gives you the ability to adapt to different things um, that may arise in your life that if you can rise to the top will put you in a better position. Uh, then when I say smart, when I say smart, I mean this in two different ways. So smart being often meant for being rational, but also someone who is of above average intelligence because the thing is to be rational to 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 display rationality usually requires above average intelligence, although it doesn't require like genius level intellect. It does require at least above average intelligence to be rational. So that's what I mean when I'm referring to someone who's smart. I'm generally speaking of someone with above average intelligence and tends to be more rational. So that's what I mean when I'm using smart as this, I guess, more as a folksy a folksy science term for people of above average intelligence and who are rational. So just to be clear about that. But yeah, being smart is cool because I mean, for one, look at taking interest in certain academic endeavors i- is interesting in itself. Like some people take some people actually enjoy what they're studying in school. Um, they like studying math. They like studying literature, or history, or art, or music, um, or other academic subjects. Um, some of them have fun, studying and going over the going over the information they need to know to do well on tests. Some people actually enjoy studying, believe it or not. They don't see it as a chore; they see it as something enjoyable. Especially people who love that sort of repetitive, who like sort of like repetitive activities. I mean, it's no less different in sports. For someone who's an athlete, they were the constant. Um, it's not just like winning games, which is fun for them, but actually like going to practice for them is actually enjoyable. Like they actually enjoy, going to practice. Where some people are just results oriented. They just like what comes out of practice, which is winning games and the clout that comes with it. So those so you have that both in in academics and athletics. You have those who are results oriented, like they don't so much like they enjoy the results of studying or of practice, which is acing their tests, right? So they can get uh, their academic accolades, and similarly in athletics to win those games, so they can get get the clout that comes from that. those are the results oriented type folks. They're more externally motivated. But the ones who are more internally motivated, again, whether it's academics or athletics, enjoy the process. They're process oriented. They enjoy actually studying day to day and reading the required literature. Um, on that, and with academics, same thing. I mean, with athletics, the same thing. They enjoy going to practice every day and sweating it out, um, because they just love the sport that they practice. It's not necessary. I mean, yes, they love winning games as a result, but that's not why they do it. They do it just because they love the game. They do it for the love of the game. Like literally, they do it for the love of the game. Because that's a common thing people say now, for the love of the game. But no, they literally do it for the love of the game. So do smart people when it comes to academics. They do it for the love of the game. Well, not just academics, but maybe other non-academic but still like intellectual endeavors. Like um, playing D&D or Magic, Magic, um, the the Gathering, or you know what else? What else sort of geeky stuff? I mean, there was so many. Video games, like just playing video games. Um, reading and collecting comic books. Like that's what I'm saying. Like so being smart is cool. I mean, I would like some. I would like some people to kind of comment on this, other than just these little trolls on here that I'm seeing. Brian Rasmussen says Common Core. Common Core. I mean, that's not really what I'm talking about. Like when you say Common Core, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you mean. Are you saying people who enjoy doing the Common Core curriculum? But mm, mm, mm. Yeah, a lot of people would just many of you are just commenting stuff that has literally nothing to do with this topic, so I'm just gonna continue ignoring you. Um, but yeah, as I was saying, in other countries, it is actually like cool to be smart and to display being smart. Like I said, my homeboy, when his family from Nigeria was saying, over there the girls try to get with the guys who do well in school. Unlike here, like they like the goofballs. Like they like the clowns, and then later end up getting knocked up by these little pookies, and then, and then when they can't find the type of guys that they used to ignore back in school, then they say, "Oh, there's no good guys out here," and blah blah blah, all this sour grape stuff because they can't find the guys that they want. When those were the guys who wanted them, 5, 10 years ago back in high school, and they shitted on them. So those guys moved on and to better pastures. Meanwhile, these girls get knocked up by the cool guys who aren't going anywhere in life, and it creates a circle of losers in the black community and in the Latino community. Except over there, they have a stronger sense of family. So usually these people who are like high school sweethearts in a Latino community, they usually stay together. So anyway, like I said, I can go so many different ways with this conversation, but I was trying to see if people were going to comment on it, and then it was I could let it splinter off from there. But because I have less patience than I used to, because I get up much earlier, I'm not willing to like wait an hour and just dither about in the conversation with myself before we get to people who will, are ready to engage in the conversation. But like I said, it can go different ways. Like I said, in one aspect, I'm talking about being smart is cool because it allows you to um, circumnavigate life much better because um, people who are more intelligent generally can adapt to different environments and situations more easily than others of lesser intellect. Also, I'm saying smart is being cool because, like I said, in some places you are actually rewarded socially for being smart. Um, Particularly, like I said, in schools that are not that are not American public schools. American public schools um, are basically just warehouses for mediocre kids until they graduate, until they become adults, illegal adults at 18. Many public schools are just warehouses for minors until they turn 18. And it's kind of up to the individual students and their parents to push them to actually want to get ahead in school and stuff like that. Because people always complain the schools don't provide this and don't provide that. Many of these resources are available, but the kids and their parents don't take advantage of them, or these parents put their kids in an environment where they're more likely to lose if they're in some little uh, low income Black or Latino community. Even in low income Asian communities, they still do well because their culture their culture values education and self discipline. Black and Latino communities really don't. Gonna be honest. Like I said, and I think when it comes to education and intellectual endeavors, you're like punished for it, especially in the Latino community. Like you're seen as almost like I'm gonna say specifically from Mexicans because I don't want to generalize every Latino Hispanic community because they're not uniform in nature, just like the Black community, the just like the Black diaspora is not uniform in nature. So I would say like specifically Mexican culture, like you're almost seen as anti-Mexican if you want to pursue like a uh, a white collar type job that requires advanced education beyond high school. And like I said, within the Black community, like there is a like they value underachievement, and you're mocked. You are mocked for showing interest in academics. You are mocked for having like academic ambition. You're mocked for even talking intelligibly using proper grammar for even enunciating your words correctly. You're made fun of. You're being white. You sound gay. Uh, you must be ugly. But they literally say that. I'm not even making up. I'm Sad thing is I'm not even making it up. I've heard people say all that stuff to me and say it to others. They would say, "Hey, uh, why do you talk that way?" you sound white, or you sound gay, or you must be ugly, or you say something that shows that you take an interest in your education. Oh, oh, he's smart. He must be lame. He must be ugly. Um, why you trying to be white? In 2026, they still say that. I'm not joking. They still say that in 2026. Not only that, even adults say this to other black adults. Black adults say this to other black adults. Like you thought that was something that people grew out of once they left school and became adults. But no, even adults will tease other adults saying, why do you talk that way? You sound white." Like, we are fucking adults. Who wants to be talking like a goddamn a teenager from the hood at 31 years old? That's just bananas. And I would notice, like, with like Asian students in like predominantly black schools, like, what they did was strategic. So they didn't pretend they weren't smart, but at the same time, they rarely like. So you had two types of Asians in the black communities, and these are usually like Southeast Asians. They were the more the ones that were more likely to behave like the black kids. All the while, they were still probably pretty smart, but they were hiding it by trying to, blend in with the culture. So that was one type of Asian in the black community. The other types stayed really like reticent and to themselves. Like my homeboy, um, I had my Chinese friend. Like he he didn't hide that he was smart, but at the same time, like he wasn't like always raising his hand trying to participate. Like, they were kind of hide that they were smart by not participating actively in class, but they tended to always blow the curve, blow the grade curve. They tended to be do the best in school because this despite the fact that they weren't likely to participate, um, they did all their work and more. And they would tend to be well-rounded students because they would also do sports. They just didn't do the sports with the many of the black kids like um, valued, which was basketball and football. They would be in stuff like tennis and soccer and um, badminton, stuff like this, stuff like that. Stuff you could get a scholarship if you wanted, but also it was like it made them a well-rounded student for like for college admissions. Uh, Charles Hales, this is all I could tell you true stories about this. He said, "I'm a white man twice adopted by both halves of a black family. I come from an aristocratic background. Do tell." Uh, I tell you as a white man to quote unquote them. If you read it's worse. If you read it's worse than if you were dumb. They mock educated black people like you wouldn't believe. Oh no, I would believe because I went through it. I'm a Generation X kid, and I think we had it worse than millennials and Gen Z, because the whole reason Gen X got its name is that we were first called the lost generation, although there already is a lost generation. So when the Pew Research Center were naming the um, different social generations, we got label with Gen X, which I think came out of a magazine article at the time from like Time or Newsweek back in like the 90s. Um, but Gen X were known for like being proud underachievers. So like I said, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you got you got teased horribly for having the audacity to be smart. You were teased relentlessly. So you had to have a tough skin back then. That's why, like I say, as a Gen Xer now and in my middle years, I'm not easily to. It's not easy to offend me, nor do I get offended for other people because I think they should have a tough skin as well. Um, but yeah, like I said, the stuff I'm talking about comes from personal experience, so I can definitely believe it. And like I said, Gen X were known as proud underachievers. Like people don't know now because The Simpsons has evolved for so many years since it's been on TV from 1989 till now, and it started even earlier on the Tracy Ullman show before it got its own spin-off show. It was on, so it had been on like Tracy Ullman for like 2 years before it got its spin-off in 1989. But Bart Simpson was basically supposed to embody what a Gen X kid was at the time. Like I say, a proud underachiever. That's how we were saw. So a Gen X kid that was smart was automatically a nerd, a lame, and it was worse for a black kid if he was smart because not only were you seen as a nerd or lame, you were also seen as being white, as being like not part of the community. It was bad. So I yeah, I knew about that quite well. Luckily, we there was positive examples of smart black men in 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 mainstream popular media at the time because of the efforts of people like Dr. Cosby. I don't care what people got to say about Dr. Bill Cosby. Dr. Bill Cosby made it made it cool to be a smart black kid, both on the Cosby Show and on A Different World. Like for me, I looked up to Dwayne Wayne. I even had his little flip up shades as a kid too. When I was like 8, 9 years old, I had the little flip up shades trying to look like Dwayne Wayne from A Different World. Um, fuck Urkel. Urkel was a parody. Like Urkel was a mockery of black nerds, but Dwayne Wayne was like the positive prototype. Like anything Cosby put out on TV gave a good representation of of smart black kids. It wasn't he didn't glorify the degenerate behavior or normalize kids being black kids being stupid like out other programs of the time did. Charles says, "Yeah, I'm pissed about this stuff." He says, "Oh, look how cute the N word can read and write. I've heard it firsthand and three the first and he said I've heard it firsthand and through the first punch too." Um, yeah, you got it sound like you got some unresolved issues with this in your past. Um, but he was like, "Yeah, showing intelligence makes you a bigger target for bullying." Well, yeah, that's how I kind of led into martial arts when I was 7. Well, actually, no, my parents made me take martial arts when I was 7. Like when I was 7, we signed up for a membership at the Y when I moved to Chicago, and they required me to learn how to swim and to learn self defense. They thought as a little black boy, I should know how to fight and I should know how to swim. So Charles says you're the first person other than myself that mentions this particular subject. I mean, I've there's other people in the Black manosphere who have brought this up. Trust me, but too many people in the Black manosphere are now anti-intellectual themselves. So that's I think where the difference lies. This has definitely been brought up by folks in the Black manosphere, like Ask a Brother podcast with Jeff St. James. Shout out to him. He's a clinical psychologist who has a red pill perspective on mental health for men, particularly black men. So he brings up stuff like this. O'Shea Duke Jackson brings it up as well sometimes. Um, the late great Kevin Samuels brought this stuff up. But too many of the other people in the manosphere try to shit on education and just tell every man he should just go to trade school. And I just disagree with that because not everyone wants to work with their hands. Two, if education is becoming quote unquote feminized or quote unquote left wing, the antidote to that is to have more people, um, more men go into higher education to keep it balanced, not to let them just let it run amok with bad ideas that that become unchecked. Charles says degradation because of intelligence is an outrage, and he goes on to say, unfortunately, in a lot of circles, I'm the bad guy because I'm white, but I'm the insider that defends the credibility of the black community. Yeah, so yeah, Charles, I'm going to tell you straight up, like you're not going you're not going to win in a conversation about that with the black community because look, as a black guy, I'm not I'm look, I'm yelling into the void basically. Like basically the only ones who are going to agree with me are the people who already agree in the first place. Like I'm just preaching to the choir, so to speak. And that would be the same for you, but is for you it's not going to come off well unless you articulate it very very particularly well, because coming from you being white, even if you did grow up in a black community, all they're going to do is see your skin color and just assume that you're being condescending. Like that's all it is now. Like people, too many people today don't think critically and they automatically commit the genetic fallacy when it comes to people's claims and arguments. Like they're going to look at you and they're going to look past the content of your argument and just look at your skin and say you're trying to talk down to white to they're going to say you're just trying to talk down to black people, just as if like a man, if he's correcting something wrong that a woman said, um she's people are going to look past the content of your claims or your argument and just say, oh, you're just a mansplaining to a woman. A lot of people commit the genetic fallacy because they're not willing to put in the intellectual, um, they don't have the intellectual chops to actually um, determine the merit of a claim based on its veracity, but instead on superficial things like who's making the claim, when the claim is being made, uh, and other superficial things that are actually irrelevant to the truth value of that claim or the um, validity of the argument. So Cookie says kindness is the highest expression of wisdom. I don't like that's a I know that's a nice platitude to say, but I don't really think that's true. I think the highest expression of wisdom is taking one of the most complicated subjects in the world and breaking it down to where even a child can understand it. that would be one of the highest expression of wisdom for me, and I think to a lot of people. Snowden forever says the really smart people know how to play the fool when necessary. Um, Maybe I'm not sure if the whole Macbeth thing is going to work for everyone. It didn't even really work for Macbeth at the end, did it? I don't think. But wait, am I getting my Shakespeare wrong? Are we talking about Mac? Is that an allusion to Macbeth or Hamlet? Sometimes get the two confused. I'm thinking Macbeth, but I could be wrong. Could be Hamlet. In any case, I like both plays, Shakespearean plays, but I might be confusing one with the other. In any case, you get the gist. Um, the guy, the smart. I don't. I think what smart people who are very socially adept can do is sometimes they can downplay their intelligence, depending on the audience in which they're being received, right? So it so if you're amongst children, for instance, it doesn't pay to use a bunch of jargon that only grad students will understand, right? Also, if you're talking to like people, just people in the general population, again, trying to show how smart you are is not going to necessarily have the results that you think it will. Uh, but that doesn't necessarily mean playing the fool. I don't think you have to pretend to be dumb to to try to get over on people. That's actually more sounds that actually sounds very Machiavellian, which is not where where I can say it is a particular display of intelligence. I don't think I don't think it's a particularly effective way of getting things done other than by trying to manipulate people. So I don't know if I would agree with that completely. Charles Charles Hale says it's like Satan. He is outraged at the mirror for having the audacity to match his image in a reflection. To be honest, mainly old money, keep it in the family. Green men. Mm, well, I get the gist of that, but to be pedantic for a second, uh, Satan wouldn't be outraged at looking at himself in the mirror. Satan would. So the medieval the medieval caricature of Satan was basically um, this satyr looking character because he basically looked they basically made him look like the Greek the Greek god Pan, who was like a satyr, half goat, half man type looking person. But if you look at uh, the original conception of Satan, he was known to be like the most like beautiful man there ever was. Like that's why he was Lucifer. Like he was Lucifer could get your bitch. I'm just saying, Lucifer got the ladies. I mean, it would have been more like the Devil's Advocate with with Al Pacino or something like that. Although he would have looked way more attractive, but you get the gist. Like Satan wasn't known to be a hideous creature. That came about later in medieval, like I said, medieval caricatures of Satan, uh, which basically made him look similar to the Greek god Pan, I believe, who was like a satyr, half goat, half man type looking person, whereas Jehovah was pictured more looking like Zeus, because there was this crossover between in medieval medieval uh, scholasticism um, where um, they kind of combine uh, pagan ideas coming from Greco-Roman culture, particularly like um, people who were Aristotelians or Neoplatonists with Christian ideals, and so God became represented in the image of basically Zeus, Satan, in the picture of like Pan or some satyr, uh, half goat, half man type creature. Um, the angels became more known to look like childlike cherubs, even though the original cherubim were terrifying creatures. If you read the Old Testament, cherubs did not look like cute little baby children. They look like they look terrifying. So like I said, that's all a diversion. But um, but just to get back to the point, yeah, Satan's reflection would have pleased him much so. But I get what you're saying that um, you're talking about the I know you're making a cultural criticism, so don't think the point was lost on me. I'm just being pedantic. As far as old money and all that sort of stuff, that's a huge aside. Like that's a topic for another day. But I don't what old money like. Old money can mean different things. You can talk about old money coming all the way from Europe, or you can talk about old money that started in America through the westward expansion. How a lot of Americans became wealthy through the westward expansion. So that so like I said, you can mean old money in that sense, like the people who came over to America who were already wealthy back in Europe, or you can talk about the people who became wealthy in America through taking advantage of the westward expansion, um, or or taking advantage of slavery. But yeah, just notice forever says Cosby Show Jinx. Charles says thy silence Bill. Oh, they silence Bill. He means Bill Cosby because of the power his opinion had during what was going on. He's an MLK Jr. case. There was no Cosby case. Well, so what I'll say is I wasn't there, so I don't know if any of the cases, any of the accusations against Cosby had merit. What I do know is that some of them patently lied, like the woman who was considers herself the first supermodel. Like she lied on stand and admitted she did so in her autobiography, and then when she was later questioned why she lied on the stand, and then said later in her book that she did lie, but didn't say this in court. She was like, "Well, yeah, because I can't be convicted of perjury in my book now, can I?" Wow, wow. On top of that, uh, Cosby's conviction was due to them taking away his due process. So people kept saying, "Oh, he just got off on a technicality." I'm sorry, due process is a constitutional right. So, you know, uh, take convicting someone uh, by violating their due process rights is not a technicality. That is a constitutional that is a constitutional violation. That's why he got out. People saying, oh, he just got out on a technicality. If you think due process, if you think violating someone's due process is a technicality, you got some screws loose, and you clearly don't understand uh, civic, you know, um, American civic government, civil rights and civic government and all that sort of stuff. Like you clearly failed that portion of high school when you had to take civics. Soon, if I ever said about Carl Winslow was a cop, I didn't say anything bad about Carl Winslow. I don't. And did someone else mention Carl Winslow in the chat room? Because I didn't say anything about Carl Winslow, bad or otherwise. All I said was I didn't like Steve Urkel because he was a mockery of black nerds, whereas Dwayne Wayne was a positive image of black male nerds. That was the only thing I said. Oh, my leg is itchy and ashy. Get some lotion. Michael Jackson was 100% innocent too. Again, I can't speak for either Cosby or Michael Jackson being completely innocent. You look, you can be accused of doing something that is false while still have done other things that were criminal. So necessarily beating one case does not absolve you of all the other ones. So if you have many accusers, um, it doesn't mean that just because some of them were lying that all of them were lying. So we have to be careful with that. But what I will say is I did not see, at least with the Michael Jackson situation, I didn't see legitimate cases brought against him. With Cosby, again, I don't know because there were so many accusers, and some might have had more. Some of them might have had more. Uh, some of them might have been more serious accusations than the other ones. But you have to take it. That's why you have to take it as a on a case by case basis. Because if you take it just as a collective, and several of them turn out to be false, then you can dismiss the whole thing. But then that kind of hurts the truth. That that hurts the actual victims who had genuine, whose accusations were genuine, but they got tossed aside because too many other people were crying wolf. Um, so I don't know, but it's, like I said, Michael Jackson, that's still my boy, and so is Bill Cosby. But I can't speak for them being 100% innocent because that's a strong statement to say someone is 100% innocent. I'm not, you know, because of my and most other people's epistemic distance from what those two men went through. It would be unwise to say for a fact that I know they were 100% innocent. I just can't. I don't. I'm not in a. I'm not in the position to know that. So, and I don't think any of us are. But I still like those men because of what they meant to me growing up and the the things they've done for others. Like I said, Cosby put a lot of people through school just to have all these little weird ass millennial and Gen Z girls saying, "Oh yeah, I don't want him on my college campus because they say he can't be trusted around co-ed students." Word? Then all right, then don't accept any scholarships from him then. Charles Hale says, "I certainly do have unresolved issues. I beg the MFer to say something racist while I'm standing there. This uh, the 233 the, the 233-pound black guy will be the least of their worries. I'll take a charge quick." Pause. But all right, but I get the gist. You're down for the cause. We go. I have to play. We have to play the the C Murder song for you. Matter of fact, hold up. You know what? Because I'm goofy like that. I can't play too much of it because I'll get copyrighted, but I can play like a few seconds of it. That's how it works with content creation. Uh, Give me a second. Oh, you weren't here last year when I actually was playing a bunch of random rap songs because I did a whole live stream on why hip hop was better back in the day. But yeah, I gotta do it. I gotta do it. I can't. Sorry, gotta do it. Of course, it's gonna play commercials first. Charles says why? Because if the black man defends his honor, he's the bad guy. Don't worry, I'll make sure this shit's white on white crime. Don't sweat it. Oh snap! All right, that's it. That's it. That's it. If I play too much, I'm gonna get copyrighted. Let me stop. Charles says at the same time, to the degree that this racism has been taken, he said the black community is well within its rights to group me in as a white man that is white, so he's bad. uh, Peter Yarker Johnson, the one, says I can tell you're a black belt just by looking at you. Um, I, so I have extensive martial arts experience, but I'm a non I would say I'm a non-traditional expert. I don't have a black belt, although I have considered going back to like judo and maybe even taekwondo to have a just to finish out the belt. But I've had a non-traditional uh, trajectory into like things like kickboxing and Muay Thai and uh, Janfan Jeet Kune Do, uh, Salat and Filipino martial arts, Savat, and many of them have their own systems of achievement that aren't belts. So like in Savat, they have gloves. So the equivalent to like a black belt in Savat would be like the silver glove. Um, in Filipino martial arts, it depends which one, but like in modern arnis, they do actually use a belt system in modern arnis, but not in the other ones. In the other ones, they don't really have any belt. Some of them, some of them didn't even have a name until like people like Guru Dan and Nasanto actually gave them like a formal name. But he often just puts them under the umbrella term of Filipino martial arts, um, since they all have like similar roots in the Philippines, and also because it becomes controversial in the naming because the name often will in the Philippines dictate like how you feel about certain aspects of Filipino culture. So calling it our niece is the a term used in northern Philippines in like the in Luzon, where calling it uh, Kali is more popular, I believe, in the the southern parts of the Philippines, where calling it a screama is more popular in the middle part of the Philippines, like the Visayas. The problem is again, but with a screama, a lot of people don't like that because it's a Spanish term, and Filipinos who don't like using the terms of their colonial oppressors don't want to use the term eskrima. Um, so others prefer Kali, um, but others prefer the more modern term Marnice. So anyway, to get around that controversy, um, we just start saying Filipino martial arts as an umbrella term for those three for those terms that are all co-referent to the same martial arts systems in the Philippines. But anyway, my point is not a black belt, but yes, I guess you can say I'm a non-traditional expert. Charles Hill says I know him. I'm a reverend. I didn't know you were a reverend. You're an aggressive reverend. Snowden says in the land of quote, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, unquote, is actually a myth. He was considered a fool for trying to convince the town to do the farming in the day during the hottest times of day. Uh, okay. But Charles Hale says I want calling him ugly. I wasn't calling him ugly. I was remarking at the fact that he can't stand something matching his brilliance. I didn't want to give the devil his due in the original analogy. No. No. Like I said originally, I got you. I actually got the gist of what you were saying. I was just trying to be pedantic because a lot of people do still have that um people who aren't taught you know classic uh the classics um may may only have education about biblical biblical figures from church may not know those those certain things so about how Christianity has evolved over the years, including how we pictured some of these celestial figures like uh, God and the devil and demons and angels and all those sorts of things. That's so I was it was just a pedantic point, but no, I got what you I got your point that you wasn't actually calling the devil ugly. You was just using that as an allegory. I got it. Trust me, I did get that. I was just being pedantic. Snowden Forever says even though he saw the truth, they thought him crazy and useless. Charles Hale says Satan's arrogance and self-image is for him and him alone. He is very arrogant. To him, his reflection is the mirror saying, "Look, me too." The mirror is offensive because it tells him he's not the only one. Right? Because like again, like in the movie Devil's Advocate, the he kept saying vanity was his favorite sin, and that did and truly that did lead to his downfall. Um, and this is also pointed out in Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien with uh, the original the origin of evil with was Melkor, aka Morgoth, who was the original Dark Lord, who Sauron actually served. It's not pointed out, particularly in Lord of the Rings. You have to go on and read like in the appendices of Lord of the Rings or the books that Tolkien wrote after Lord of the Rings that goes into like the whole is a whole book they talks about the first age of Middle Earth and how Morgoth was the original Dark Lord because when Iluvatar, which is God in Lord of the Rings, in the Tolkien books, Satan is Morgoth. He was the one who rebelled against um, Iluvatar, Eru the Iluvatar, when he was singing the songs with the with the the angelic like creatures, the Maiar and the other figures, the Valar and the Maiar, and Morgoth was the mightiest of the Valar, and he decided to corrupt Eru Iluvatar's song, um, and that was the beginning of evil because he wanted to go against Eru Iluvatar. But the thing was, Eru Iluvatar was always the more powerful, and had actually made it that Morgoth could do those things in the very process anyway. So in a way, it was like even with the instance of evil and Morgoth doing so many things, um, Eru Iluvatar, hence God, made it part of his plan that he would be allowed to do these things just to better show the strength of Eru Iluvatar and being able to overcome these things and make it still a part of his overall plan for the world. Yeah, J.R.R. Tolkien gets very deep. He was a he was a deeply Catholic man. So anyway, Charles Hale says I'm well trained in dual swordsmanship. I've trained in I've trained three men simultaneously. I have my own hand to hand style I call sword and shield. In this way, uh, because of the way I look, you can find me. I have a few shorts. Okay, I didn't know you were a content creator as well. Um, yeah, I definitely want to pick up some fencing. I don't know what sort of swordsmanship you practice, but I would like to learn. Olympic style fencing, as well as I would like to learn kendo and aikido. So I don't know what you practice particularly, but that sounds impressive. Snowden says I'm certified in fairy tale psychology with an emphasis in religion. Is that a real thing? Fairy tale psychology? I mean, I wouldn't doubt that that's an actual subject nowadays. Like, you can, they have, you have college majors in almost anything. Like, you know that there's actual college majors now on being a influencer. I'm not even joking. Like, there are majors now for being a social media influencer. Um, and even places where they don't have the major, like a lot of places now offer classes on becoming a social media influencer. Snowden forever says you're speaking my nerd language. Thank you, Jay's the limit, by the way, for the GIF. Appreciate it. He says, "Hope you have a good night. Jesus loves you." Appreciate that. Snowden forever says mythology and folklore for the layman. Yeah, I mean, I nerd out over like mythology and stuff like that. And for me, for the most part, not to be controversial, but I consider religion for the most part, mythology and folklore. It's just that one, when you believe it, when it's actually embraced by uh by a culture at a given time, it's religion. When it's no longer believed by that culture, it becomes mythology. That's pretty much the only difference. But anyway, all of this kind of like confirms my point that being smart is cool. Like when you're smart, you can talk about more things intelligibly and have more engaging conversations. You know what I mean? So this kind of gets back to my point that yeah, being smart is cool. Like I said, it makes you more likely to be socially adept. It makes you able to hold more interesting conversations and get engaged with more a wider range of subjects. Uh, Also, again, in certain cultures, they like you're rewarded for your intellectual acumen, even if not necessarily so in the U.S. Someone says, "I'm glad the algorithm suggested you new subscriber here. Appreciate it. Thank you, man. Have a lovely night. Appreciate that. Because I will be going to bed shortly. Yeah, but this, it started off slowly, but we got, we had a good conversation, guys. So appreciate that. Thank you for the gifs that some of you sent me. Didn't make it to 10. It was three shy of 10, but that's still a good start here at seven of them, seven gifts. What's the subject? Mark Travis asked. The subject is being smart is cool. That's all. That is the subject. Being smart is cool. And kind of started off by talking about how you know in American society, particularly in the Black community, you often socially um, ridiculed for showing for displaying intelligence, being smart. Um, but as time goes along, that kind of changes because it's those people who were smart that are more adept and more likely to succeed in school and go on to have rewarding careers where they can provide to the very women that mocked them when they were younger. But now most of these guys look past those women because they end up getting knocked up by Pookie, and so they're no longer desirable. Meanwhile, the nerd gets the last laugh. Hence, Revenge of the Nerds. Mac Brown says, "Preach, my brother." Mark Travis says, "Yeah, that's cool. I try to be smart by not focusing on race." He said, "I was born in Detroit in '65." That's what's up. Um, it's not so much a focus on race. My point was just that uh, um, American culture in general has not been very appreciative of smarts up until like recently now because we now have sort of a cognitive elite run in society. So now it is seen as socially acceptable to be out to be smart, whereas before you had to kind of like keep that to yourself or keep it niche with a bunch of other like-minded friends. And that's particularly for Gen X. So you're Gen X as well, but you're the original Gen X from 1965. So you know as well as I did that Gen X definitely did not look look highly upon people who were smart and often made fun of them. And you missed what I was saying earlier in the live stream, but I was saying when The Simpsons first came out, they first had this came out in December '89 as they were a spinoff from the Tracy Ullman show. But when Bart was first made to be a representation of a typical Generation X kid who was a proud underachiever. So Mark says, I have noticed kids these days don't study cursive and skilled trades. Um, so a reason a lot of them didn't actually, I saw reports in the news now where some schools are actually going back to teaching them cursive. But yeah, for like the last decade or so, they haven't been teaching them cursive because most of the kids were doing most of their work on computers, and they would take computers to school to like take down their notes and do their work. Um, but what we know now is that actually writing stuff down actually causes more memory retention. When you're forced to write things down manually, it actually causes more memory retention than simply like just typing it on a keyboard. So that's why a lot of public education now realizes that they need to go back to those old school methods. And for what it's worth, it's I think it's worth noting that a lot of people who work in in the tech world, like Silicon Valley and stuff like that, have often sent their kids to private schools that shun technology because they know it doesn't help with learning. That actually kind of retards their learning. So it's worth so I say it's worth noting that they don't they send their kids to schools that reject the very things that they create for the masses. That makes you think, because that's sort of like, drug dealers don't sell to their friends and family, just to strangers. So Mark said, I knew exactly what. Um, he said, I say a bad example. A bad example of a typical white family is married with children. Yeah. He says they need to know cursive to read the founding documents. So that was also a point made in that report, in that news report I was watching a week or two ago, is that a lot of these young folks, by not being taught cursive, are missing out on being able to interpret um, older, historical documents. So yeah, that was a point made also in that news report, and again, that goes into why some schools are returning cursive to the curriculum. Um, I think it's going to be a school. It's going to be on this decision from district to district, or even by school to school, whether they teach cursive or not. Because whether we like it or not, it's not essential in today's society anymore. Because most people don't make don't write out documents by hand anymore. Most of it's all typed out on a computer. Uh, and on top of that, even when you do need to do cursive for signature, like through most of the Word documents or email apps and stuff like that, they can convert your name to to cursive for you as your signature, so that you don't have to actually do it yourself. So I don't think cursive is going to die out, because it's still useful, particularly like I said, for reading historical documents. Like, you have to know cursive to know how to read it. So that's one reason. And then for another reason is that as more of as more of the insights from cognitive science filter into education, they'll realize that the older methods of writing down your notes in your own penmanship causes more memory retention than just typing things on a computer, where you don't have to think about it when you write it out. Like, when you write it out by hand, you're forced to think more, because it activates certain parts of your brain um, that are involved in speech and language processes. When you forced to listen to when you have to listen to someone and then interpret that and write it down in your own penmanship, and then you have to go over the notes in your penmanship, which is why, like, in college, they always taught us, like, after we take down our lecture notes, to go over to review and revise our notes that day. So, and at least that led to memory retention. Plus, it forced us to think through the things that we wrote and the things that we heard that day in lecture, by going over what we wrote and revising it as necessary. You don't get the same thing when you're doing it on a computer, especially now with the apps that can manually take down the notes for you and revise it for you. Like, when you have an app that can do all that for you, you're not thinking yourself, which means you're not going to retain it. You're not making the you're not making the the mental connections yourself, so that you will put that into memory for when it comes to exam time. And then some of them will try to cheat during exams. A lot of them will lie and claim they have a disability, just so they can have a longer time to do exams. But anyway, that's getting besides the point. um, Mark says teach kids at home to farm. I don't know about that one. I think the agri the agrarian era of America is over for the most part. I think this is why we still have um, this current school year that we have where we give them like 3 months off for the summer and then they come back and then there's this learning curve they got to get over every school year in the fall because they have 3 months outside of school where other schools in other parts of the world don't have like 3 months off for summer. Like they get off like a nice month or so, like in Japan, but mostly in Japan they're in school all year round. Like they get I guess like a month or so off for summer, but they don't. Most of these schools don't take the long summer break that America does, and that came out of the agrarian era society of America, where most families still lived on farms, and so the families needed their kids to help bring in the harvest during those times of the year, and that so the summer so summer vacation is a byproduct of that bygone era. Um, I'm not sure if returning kids to having to till the farm uh, would be a good idea. Like I said, especially being that today's society is headed towards a cognitive elite, so we need to prepare our students to be more involved with more intellectual pursuits. And there's nothing wrong with farming. Like if someone desires their kids to take over the family farm, which are now not, which are more like corporatized today. So which means they still probably will need an advanced education beyond high school, not necessarily college, but they might need to do some skilled trade of a sort that is conducive to running managing a farm. I don't know, uh, but this isn't Little House on the Prairie, so things have changed quite a bit, and kids will need advanced education to survive in the 21st century. Marx is a good example of needing to know constitutional law being pulled over. Plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. 1, 3, 4, 5. Same style. I'm playing. But yeah, Mark says officers can still escalate, but you can ask if their body cams are on. Yeah. My thing is just the easiest way to survive a police encounter, be nice. Be nice. Don't be a jerk. Be nice. Remember, the cop is a person too. Be nice. That look, being nice can get you out of so many bad situations. The lack of just human kindness sometimes is what causes so many unnecessary problems on both sides, by the way. But yeah, Mark says, plus we use the library and not Google. That is truth. Back in the day when I needed to know something, it was either, you know, look at my encyclopedia, go to the library, or ask my parents. One of the three. And of the three, asking my parents was the most unreliable information. So luckily I had, most kids in the 80s had a an encyclopedia set because because most parents back then were guilted into buying encyclopedias because you know us Generation X kids remember when in like I don't know about the 70s, but definitely like in the 80s, they used to sell the encyclopedias in the supermarket. They would like either like it would be like maybe like they wouldn't, it usually wasn't an entire set. Like sometimes they would just sell you volume by volume, um, or they would allow you to buy the set and have it or mailed to your home for your kids, or the salesman. You have door to door salesmen coming to your home, not just for selling you vacuums and shit, but they used to go door to door selling these encyclopedia sets. Like it that is not something that is something that is something that I don't think people would fathom today. That you used to have door to door salesmen coming to people's houses trying to sell them books because people actually read back then, or at least they pretended to read. But yeah, you know they back then, you know, general society peer pressured parents into buying their kids encyclopedias. So most kids, had some sort of encyclopedia. I had two sets of encyclopedias. I had like my what was it? I think a world was it World Book of Encyclopedia or something like that. I had that. Then I had another set of I had another encyclopedia set for science. Scientific. It was a science encyclopedia, and I had my World Book Encyclopedia. Um, then I had like a then I had a Bible stories and like some big children's dictionary and stuff. Like I had like my whole, I had a whole bookshelf just full of reference books, encyclopedias, dictionaries, stuff like that. So that was my first go to. Like I used to just read through each volume of my encyclopedias like it was a book. But I also would go to my encyclopedias when I was needed to know information. But otherwise, I would just go to the library. Like most of the like um depending on where I lived at the time, I was able to like just ride my bike up to the library, and I might on the weekends I might be there for hours just chilling, reading books, having like just chilling. And since we were all taught how to use the Dewey Decimal System in elementary school, I could find anything I wanted, assuming that it was at the library. We were all taught how to use the Dewey Decimal System because the schools had a library as well, and it used to be like um, a, a like one day every year, like we spent the day at the library, and the school librarian taught us how to use the resources there, how to find books, how to use the Dewey Decimal System, um, how to use microfiche. I don't know if I think they still have microfilm and the microfiche machines at libraries. Although I'm pretty sure most people don't use them anymore because they can probably find all that stuff online. But I'm guessing a lot of old material may have never been put online, so you still might have to look it up on a microfiche. But also, as things went online, there were further library skills that you had to learn. You had to learn how to use online databases to find information, like JSTOR or the APA Psych Info, and just all sorts of like whatever database depending on the particular subject you were looking for. So you had to learn how to use online databases and search engines, stuff like that. So that was a further library science skill uh, you had to learn once we became teenagers or adults. So I think we had the edge learning that stuff early on because there was no AI to do it for us. Now I can be lazy and just ask Google Gemini or ChatGPT information, and it'll collect and curate it for me. But we weren't that lucky back in the 80s and early 90s. Mark Travis says we need a good food supply. Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't shitting on farming. My issue was that most people aren't going to return back to that agrarian state of society that we had, you know, 100 plus years ago. Um, And like I said, most farming is corporate now. It's not like mom. There's very few like mom and pop farms today. Like I mean, there are, but they're mostly like just they. So a lot of the mom and pop stores, I mean, sorry, mom and pop farms are actually part of a larger farming network system. Um, Whereas it's not like I said, it's not like back in the day where it was a mom and pop farm that made their money selling directly to whatever industry, the corn industry or the beef industry, the pork industry, whatever. Like nowadays, usually the little mom and pop farms are sort of like working the land on behalf of a larger corporate entity. He said, "What do they do if we get an EMP?" Um, I mean, I think the EMP thing is a little over. Uh, and you think like of an EMP on a global scale. I will say this. I think the because this always comes up in prepper communities and stuff like that. Like if you're in like a prepper community or people who take seriously like the SHTF scenarios and bugging out and stuff like that. Like I said, if you're talking about like the prepper community and stuff like that, um, I think the whole notion of a global EMP is a little overdone because where EMP can knock out a lot of stuff, it's not going to knock out everything. And yes, it is good to be self-sustaining. I think so. That's what you mean by a farm. You don't necessarily mean making a living from having a farm. You mean having a self-sustaining source of food. That I get, and you can do that on a minor level. I don't think that means you need to have a farm. Like you can, you know, grow your own crops um and keep like small uh small animals, and depending on if you have that sort of house that allows you to do so. But mind you, most people live in smaller confined spaces that don't allow them to own land to raise crops or animals. So the farm won't so a farm, much less having a house big enough to raise crops and animals, isn't a reality for most Americans. Uh-oh. What he says the farm tends to help the Amish. Well, the Amish have a whole uh anti uh modern lifestyle. So the farming works for them because they work again, they the Amish community works as a collective. All their like they pool their resources as a whole community, and then they sell these things off to um these different food industries. It's not these aren't these aren't individual families, individual Amish families um doing that stuff. This is like the whole community pulling their resources together, and as a collective, they sell their goods to um to the general population, or they sell their goods to some industry who then sells their products. Uh, Mark says Detroit Public Library. Oh, he says sent $5. Thank you. So I'm actually so my goal ended, but I'm wait. So I got past that. Appreciate that, the boss 55. So I got to 107 gifts. Um, Farmer Jacks, Mayors. He said my first job in 1984, minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. Yeah, I remember my first official job, because my first job was when I was 13, I believe. Yeah, when I was 13, I was like helping the custodian at Howard University clean up the office. My father was paying me to help the custodian. So I'm not sure if that counts as a real job, but my first official job was working at Burger King. As soon as I turned 16, like I applied when I was 15. As soon as I turned 16, they let me start working, and minimum wage at that time was, I think, 4.25 an hour in 1993. Yeah, in yeah 93, and so I got paid 4.35 an hour, just a dollar over you. Mark says my grandma was from Missouri. She gave me a subscription to National Geographic. So I guess the library is Starbucks now. Well, yeah. So some libraries do have cafes in them. I know the one on my one of the libraries at my alma mater converted part of the space in the library to being a cafe, which I think is great because it helps people study. You know, by being pro caffeinated. He said my folks took us to Henry Ford Museum. I didn't know he had a museum, so I'm guessing that is probably in Michigan, and or more specifically in Detroit, Michigan. Mark says in 10 years, farms will have robots. Well, I don't know who needs to tell you, Mark, but a lot of farming is already automated. So there already are like quote unquote robots on farms. Not robots in the sense of like you know like androids like C3PO and R2D2, but there is a lot of automation already involved in farming. He said if you go to Upper Michigan, you see old farms and cider mills. Yeah, I mean, I've I used to live in the Midwest when I was a kid, um, and where our recreational centers was a farm. Like our recreational center was a farm, where we used to have a day camp during the summer. So, but yeah, thank you for the gift. I think Jameson Dehaney sent me um, a gift as well. Appreciate it. Mark says, I mean, like me and the wife have some plants in the apartments. No, that's cool. Like I said, some people might grow things hydroponically if they have limited space. So you can grow crops hydroponically if that's what you're referring to as well. So you can definitely do it. My my point was that for most part, a lot of people don't own single family. A lot of people nowadays don't own single family homes where they have the space to like grow their own crops or raise small animals like goats or chickens. So anyway, I'm gonna call it a day. I don't know why. Um, I don't know why Mark Travis got refrained from using foul language. I didn't even see him use foul language. I missed that. Josiah Longworth 8976 says, "Do I know Travis?" He said he works with you. I used to know a Travis that I worked with 10 years ago. I don't know if you're referring to that Travis that I worked with 10 years ago, but um, I yes, I knew a Travis from 10 years ago that I used to work with. Um, to if that's to whom you're referring, and someone was very obsessed about the cleanliness of my glasses. So, anywho, I'm getting off. So they can people can say what they like. I'm out. But again, the topic was being is cool. I'm not sure if I made the point as well as I could have, just because I was kind of hoping for more, chat room participation so I could go into it, and I did get some of that earlier on. So that's fine. We'll leave it here. Um, until then, I will see you guys later with my glasses. And until then, take it easy, guys. Bye.